What's going on, guys? Today we're back and we're finally doing the next unboxing. This is Frodo and the Fellowship, the third Commander deck unboxing that I'll be doing from the newest set from MTG, Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth. So, this one looks like it should be a lot of fun. Again, I've kept myself free of any kind of spoilers, so I really don't know anything about this deck. However, we do have some really cool color combinations. We got green, black, and white, which means that there's a ton of ways this deck could go with, ramping into killing, tokens, there's board control options. There's so many things that they could do. So, very excited to see what this box has to offer. So, let's get into it. So, first thing we're going to do is actually open it. As with the others, I'm going to open it fairly carefully because I do intend to keep the boxes. Alright. So, there we go. We'll put that over here so we're safe. Alright, so once you unbox the box, we have, of course, the full art Frodo Adventurous Hobbit. He is a 2-cost 1/3 Halfling Scout, which is pretty cool. We get our we get a reach counter, which is cool, and then we get a ton of these +1/+1 counters, which means says to me at least that this deck is going to be very counter heavy, which I think is kind of cool. Now, if you flip the box over, we have the two little compartments, each one with their own unique card. We have the deck in this one, and in this one, we have, put that aside for a second. Sorry. We have this little fold-out deck box that all these decks are provided with, which I think is pretty cool. Like I said before, I'm currently out of deck boxes, so the fact that they provided us with a deck box is nice. However, just as an FYI, this won't actually fit the deck if you do sleeve it, as I've come to find out the hard way. So we might hold off sleeving some of these decks. But regardless, it is cool. It does say Lord of the Rings, Tales of Middle-earth, and then it has this nice full art photo of Frodo and Sam. That's pretty cool. Now, on the other half, if we open it up, there we go. We get a bunch of stuff. Of course, with all of these commander boxes, we do get one package of cards. However, we will open this up at the end, so if you want to see that, stay tuned. We get our handy-dandy little life counter wheel, which I do think is a pretty cool inclusion. My only gripe, like I have said, is that it goes from 40 to 21, and then you have to flip it. But, I mean, at least it makes you aware that, hey, you're losing quite a bit of life, because that's a scary symbol. So we'll put the deck aside for a moment, and we're going to open up the pamphlet because I've come to find that these pamphlets are awesome. They give a nice little insight into the deck and some pretty cool art. So when we open the pamphlet, we get to see a nice big piece of art. We have Frodo over here, I believe, and Samwise Gamgee. So it says, Frodo the Adventurous Hobbit. As a hobbit of the Shire, Frodo Baggins grew up hearing tales of adventure from his uncle Bilbo. Then it fell to Frodo to embark on an unexpected journey of his own, volunteering along the way to destroy Bilbo's magic ring, in actuality the terrifying and powerful One Ring, in the fires of Mount Doom. Backed by the fellowship of companions and Sam, his most loyal friend and gardener, Frodo dares to defy the odds in order to see his mission through to the very end. Very true. I do like the art that it does depict them here. I feel like in the movies, a lot of the time Frodo's kind of looks he's made to look a little bit weaker than I think he should. Well, in this photo, it shows him very looking very strong. He has a sword drawn, he's clutching the One Ring, and he has very defensive posture. Moving on to Sam, it says Sam, loyal attendant. Frodo's faithful companion through thick and thin is none other than Samwise Gamgee, a hobbit, a gardener, and a great cook. I feel like Gollum would beg to differ. When Frodo volunteered to deliver the ring to Mordor, Sam was the first to stand beside him. As the Fellowship of the Ring splintered and the journey across Middle-earth grew dire, the task of protecting Frodo, and by proxy the One Ring, and this entire world fell to Samwise, the Stoutheart. Very true. That does kind of bring me back to the second movie. And Frodo says, he basically wouldn't have been anywhere if Sam hadn't have come, and calls him Samwise the Brave. And, I think that's a great scene. And that kind of reminds me of it. So I'm actually really happy with that write-up that they have here. So down below, it does explain the magic colors and what they mean. I'm not going to go into that because I have done in my other two videos. But what it does says over here is, why are Frodo and Sam black and green aligned? The Hobbits' dedication to one another and selflessness in the face of danger are very well aligned. Frodo's connection to Sauron and the Nazgul through the ring, and his powerful temptation dips into black. Finally, Sam's love of home, hearth, and good food aligns him to green. Makes a lot of sense when you think about it. Now, if we flip this over, we get a nice, cool shot of the Fellowship on a field, and it says Frodo and Sam, adventurous hobbit. Frodo, adventurous hobbit, and Sam, loyal attendant. Playing the deck. Breakfast is served. The hobbits of the Shire love few things more than food and friendship. Their partner mechanic allows you to play with 2 commanders at once. Awesome. Meaning you can start the game with both Frodo and Sam in the command zone, having Sam cook up tasty food tokens to give Frodo strength when he needs to bring the ring to Mount Doom. Each nourishing food token can be sacrificed to gain life. Wait until you have a card with an ability that triggers when you gain life to create powerful combos. That is cool. So this is a food token deck with, I guess, a lot of +1/+1 counters. Awesome. And then down below, it does have, it does list the commander rules here, which is nice if you're not familiar with the commander format. However, I'm not going to go into those, as I kind of feel that anyone watching this video is familiar with the commander rules. Moving on to the deck here, we do see it is a full 100 card deck, apparently with 2 commanders, which is pretty awesome. This deck will also include the necessary tokens for the deck and a little card that shows us, that talks about the different formats of Magic and tells us how to play, or how the turns work, sorry. So the first card up is Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit. He is a 2-cost, 1/3 Halfling Scout, partnered with Sam, Loyal Attendant. He does come with Vigilance, which is pretty nice. Whenever Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit, attacks, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, the ring tempts you. Then if Frodo is the ring bearer and the ring has tempted you 2 or more times this game, draw a card. So that's nice. So we see 2 things that this deck is doing right off the bat. First, it's introducing the partner mechanic to people that might not be aware of that or have much experience with it. But also, this does show how this deck is aligned to create food tokens, as, you know, the pamphlet alluded to. And then with that mechanic, it allows Frodo, you know, to generate advantage by drawing us cards. Now, Frodo being a 1/3, I do expect that somewhere in this deck there's going to be things to buff him up. But we'll have to see. But so far, 1/3 for 2 with Vigilance. I'm not complaining at all. This card does have card draw on it, which is always nice to see. Next, we have Sam, Loyal Attendant. Sam is a 3-cost, 2/4 Halfling Peasant, partnered with Frodo, Adventurous Hobbit. At the beginning of combat, your turn, create a food token. Activated abilities of food tokens you control cost 1 less to activate. So that's kind of nice. So at the beginning of combat, he's going to make a food token. You can then sack the food token to gain 3 life, triggering Frodo's ability for the ring to tempt you. If it's tempted you multiple times, you get to draw a card, which is nice. Sam being a 3-cost, 2/4 isn't bad at all. The fact that he makes sacrificing those food tokens cost 1 less is nice, as you might not be aware. To sacrifice the food tokens, you do have to pay 2 mana. So only paying 1 does make that a little bit more palatable, because 2 mana is kind of expensive to gain 3 life. But that is a cool card there. Next, we have Eagles of the North. Eagles of the North is a 6-cost, 3/3 Flying Bird Soldier. When Eagles of the North enters the battlefield, creatures you control get +1/+0 and gain first strike until the end of the turn. Very nice. It also has Plane Cycling. So with Plane Cycling, you may pay 1, ditch the card, search your library for a Plains card, reveal it, and put it into your hand. So the Plane Cycling of this card is pretty nice. However, I'm not too much of a fan of the rest of this card. Playing 6 mana for a 3/3 flyer is a lot of mana. And I'm not seeing the value on this card at the moment. It is nice that the card makes all your creatures better for 1 turn, but I would want it to be like a continuous effect rather than just, you know, you pay 7 mana or you pay 6 mana and you get 1 turn of cool creatures. Next we have Lindroval, Horizon's Witness. This is a 5-cost, 3/4 Bird Noble with flying. Whenever 2 or more creatures you control attack a player, target attacking creature without flying gains flying into the end of the turn. That card is a lot nicer in my opinion because, 1, it's slightly cheaper. 5 mana for a 3/4 flying is still a lot. You can definitely get a similar stat line for a little bit less. However, the ability that whenever you attack with 2 creatures, 1 of your cards gets flying, that's super nice. You know, allows whatever beat 6 we have in the deck to just, you know, bypass our opponent's defenses unless they have reach or flying themselves. So that's a lot better of a card. I would have appreciated to see this on the Eagles of the North, and then this have been something more either utility or kind of more of like a beat stick. Hey, here's a card we've seen before. Rosie Cotton of South Lane. So Rosie is a 3-cost 1/3 halfling peasant. Whenever Rosie South Lane enters the battlefield, create a food token. Whenever you create a token, put a +1/+1 counter on target creature you control other than Rosie. So, two things here that we need to talk about. One, we do have the full art version of this, so we're going to swap that card out immediately for the full art version to gaze upon its majesty. But the cool thing about this is that she's going to buff Frodo and potentially Sam or whatever other beat sticks we have in the deck, making the deck feel a little bit better. Like I said earlier, I wanted cards that were going to buff Frodo as we sacrifice food token to gain 3 life so that Frodo can get tempted, and then we draw cards. Rosie's going to be, putting +1/+1s on Frodo, which is super nice. So I really like that. It is nice to see that we do have some uses for that card. Next, we have Shire Sheriff. Shire Sheriff is a 2-cost 2/2 halfling soldier with vigilance. When Shire Sheriff enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice a token. When you do, exile target creature and opponent controls until this card leaves the battlefield. That is super nice. So it gives us even more uses for these food tokens rather than just, sacrificing them to gain 3 life to trigger Frodo. The jailing effect, to remove target opponent's problematic creatures. Really, really nice. And then, once this card does die, they get it back, whatever. The key thing being that when this card comes down, it gets rid of problematic card, and then you get to make your play. Your opponent might kill it in the following turn, but by then it should have done its job. I do like the art that we see here with the sheriff and a orc that has been clearly captured. You see them all bound up there. The card text also alludes this, saying, "You're arrested for gate breaking and tearing up of rules. Oh, and trespassing and bribing guards with food." Ha! That's funny. So the orc somehow bribed the guards with food. That's funny. That's quite amusing. I can't imagine that orc cooking is that good, but somehow he did it. Next, we have Mirkwood Bats. This is a 4-cost 2/3 bat with flying. Whenever you create or sacrifice a token, each opponent loses 1 life. That is nice for the deck. So as you're making your normal plays and sacrificing tokens, this card's going to be starting to ping your opponents down, which is nice. Will help, put pressure on them. A 4-cost for a 2/3 flying, like we said, is kind of expensive. However, it's doable. Next, we have Generous Ent. This is a 6-cost 5/7 tree folk with reach. Nice. When Generous Ent enters the battlefield, create a food token. This card does have 4 cycling, so you may pay 1, discard this card to search your library for 4, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. Very happy to see that this deck does include a Pass to Exile. As we've already seen with this card before, this card is actually depicting when Grima Wormtongue is ousted from Edoras in the second movie. And we have Swords to Plowshare, so very happy to see this as well. Possibly the best white card that we do have in the game currently. It's a 1-cost instant. Exile target creature. Your opponent gains life. I forgot to say it's for Path to Exile. Path to Exile. Exile target creature. Its controller may search the library for a basic land card. Put that card into the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. So both these cards are super nice, helping to control your opponent's board, get rid of whatever scary thing they have. So you just don't have to deal with it anymore. Next, we have Reverse the Shire. This is a 2-cost sorcery. Return target permanent card from your graveyard to your hand. Create a food token. Definitely happy to see that kind of a card in this deck. As I'm assuming a lot of stuff in here is going to be pretty key for our combo. So when it dies, this card allowing us to get it back is nice. And then create a food token as well as nice. Next, we have Butterbur Bree Innkeeper, the innkeeper that manages the prancing pony, if I'm not mistaken. This is a 4-cost 3/3 human peasant. At the beginning of your end step, if you don't control a food, create a food token. Hell yeah, that's super nice. Sam creates them in the combat phase and they're immediately sacrificed by Frodo. So if you don't have any more and you need them, this card will actually give you one at the end of your turn. Unfortunately, it doesn't say during every end step, which would be nice, meaning that at the end of your turn you could start sacrificing them to gain life or whatever, to activate whatever triggers, and then him giving you them on your opponent's field. However, I do feel that would be a little strong because when it would roll back around to you, you'd have 3 additional food tokens. So I definitely understand, but that is a super nice card. At 4 costs for a 3/3, it's not too bad either. Next, we have Crypt Incursion. This is a 3-cost instant. Exile all creature cards from target creature's graveyard. You gain 3 life for each card exiled this way. Holy crow, that's super nice. So currently in the game, we have cards like Bajuka Bog or Soul's Gate Lantern, which is more popular in MTG Arena, where you can, just basically exile target opponent's graveyard so they can't make their plays either with things like flashback or reanimation. So it's super nice. However, Crypt Incursion also gains us life for each card exiled that's this way. So that's huge. That is an incredibly good card to have. I actually want to put this in some of my life gain decks now. Hey, next we have Go for the Throat. Okay, first of all, before we get into what this card does, love the card art. It shows Gollum here looking like he's about to go and attempt to grab the ring from around Frodo's neck. Go for the Throat is a 2-cost instant, destroy target non-artifact creature. This card art also, I love the text where it says, precious, precious, precious. I love everything about this. So right now, I'm telling you, it's probably going to be my favorite card from this deck. Next, we have Night Whisperer. It is a 2-cost sorcery. You draw 2 cards and lose 2 life. So super, super good for several reasons. Drawing 2 cards is amazing. Losing 2 life, when we've already seen that we have multiple ways to gain life, is not even a negative side to this card. So it basically is just a 2-cost, draw 2 cards. I do like the card art as well. Like, I feel like this really ties this card together where we see Frodo with the ring surrounding him. Definitely this is in a dream state. Kind of showing, the ring, whispering to him during his quest to destroy it, taunting him, tempting him. Hey, next we have Cultivate. Cultivate is a 2-cost sorcery. Search your library for up to 2 basic lane cards, reveal those cards, put one on the battlefield tapped, and put the other one into your hand. So super nice card. Super good card for this deck because we do have 3 different colors. This allows us to fix our mana base, and it's pretty much essential in any deck, I think, that runs green. Next, we have Essence Warden. Essence Warden is a 1-cost 1/1 elf shaman. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield, you gain life. Hey, that is nice. So I'm seeing that there's a heavy life theme to this deck, or life gain to this deck. That is cool. I'm wondering if we get to see something like some more cards in black, where we pay life to do things, or if potentially we get something like an Aether Flux Reservoir, where if we gain enough life, we can just shoot our opponent. Next, we have Farseek. This is a 2-cost sorcery. Search your library for a plains, island, swamp, or mountain card. Put onto battlefield, tap, then shuffle. That is great for this deck because it does allow us to fix our mana base. But also, one of the things I love about this card is you see the Hobbits, and I believe that's Gandalf. This is as they're on their quest to destroy the One Ring. I believe this is towards the beginning of the quest. And this actually references a scene in the movie where when Frodo and Sam are walking through Farmer Maggot's field, and Sam says, this is the farthest I've ever been from home. And Frodo starts reciting a poem that Bilbo said to him. And that poem is actually here on this card. It's a dangerous business, Frodo, going out of your front door. You step on the road, and if you don't keep your feet, there's no knowing where you might be swift off to. Bilbo. Love that card. Love the text. Love the art. Next, we have Great Oak Guardian. This is a 5-cost, 5/4 tree folk with Flash and Reach. When Great Oak Guardian enters the battlefield, creatures target player controls get +2/+2 until the end turn. Untap. Super nice. This is something that I'm a lot more comfortable playing something like 6 mana for. Obviously, this card does have Flash, which makes it super versatile. Ideally, this card, as you attack your opponents, you're going to tap all your cards. Your opponent's going to declare its blockers. You're going to then flash this card in. You're going to make them all bigger, so now your creatures aren't getting destroyed. Your opponent's cards are getting destroyed, and it untaps them, so in the following combat phases, you have some defenders. So, super nice card. Like the fact that it's going to buff up my entire deck, because so far a lot of these creatures are kind of weak, or they're really expensive, so we're probably not going to see them early. Next card we have is Harmonize. Harmonize is a 4-cost sorcery. Draw 3 cards. Super good card for any green deck. So I do like this card art as well, as it shows the 4 hobbits in a bath. The card text does read, "Sing hey, for the bath at the close of day that washes the weary mud away. A loon is he that will not sing. Oh, hot water is a noble thing." The bath song. So I think that's hysterically nice. Good way to use this card. Sorry, not a good way to use this card, but a good way to incorporate a bit of fun into this card. Next, we have Orchard Strider. This is a 6-cost, 6/4 tree folk. When Orchard Strider enters the battlefield, create 2 food tokens. It has basic land cycling for 2. Pretty nice. Creates 2 food tokens, which is super nice. So it does make up for the 6 cost for this card. 6 cost for 6/4 is pretty expensive. However, one of the nice things is that we do have basic land cycling in this card, so we can ditch it in the early game to get a land that we need, and then we do have some cards to bring it back later on. Next we have Prosperous Innkeeper. This is a 2-cost 1/1 halfling citizen. When Prosperous Innkeeper enters the battlefield, create a treasure token. Whenever another creature enters the battlefield under your control, you gain a life. This is a nice card that, you know, gives us a treasure token and will help us to gain life as the game goes on. As I've said before, I'm expecting to see some more life pay cards in this deck. Next, we have Tireless Provisioner. This is a 3-cost 2/3 Elf Scout with landfall. Whenever land enters the battlefield under your control, create a food or treasure token. The nice thing about this card is that it creates either that we need. Either it will create us a treasure token for mana or a food token in order to activate cards like Frodo. So, super nice, very versatile. Very happy to have seen this card in this deck. Hell yeah! Next, we have Mortify. Mortify is a 3-cost instant, destroy target creature enchantment. So this is a super good card, basically for any white-black deck. I do like the card art, as we do see Gollum trying to scamper out off after a rabbit. The card text, of course, alluding to the scene where after Gollum starts to eat the rabbit in front of Frodo, Sam puts it in a stew, and Gollum basically loses his mind. The card does read, soon the rabbits were cut up and lying simmering in their pans with bunches of herbs. It's a pretty fun card that makes a good reference to a pretty funny point in the movie. Next we have Savvy Hunter. This is a 3-cost 3/3 human warrior. When this card attacks or blocks, create a food token. Sacrifice 2 food tokens, draw a card. Hell yes. This is what I was hoping to have seen. Cards like this where not only does sacrificing food tokens or generating them just mean that we can activate Frodo, but cards like this that will allow us to sacrifice them to draw a card is always good. You know, we've seen in the past Corval decks take massive advantage of food token sort of engines in order to have just constant sacrifice outlets so that Corval can do what Corval wants to do best. So, very happy that this card was put in the deck. Next we have, I'm just going to play all 3 of these at once as we've seen them a couple times. We have Arcane Signet, Command Sphere, and Soul Ring. All of these 3 are mana dorks. Arguably, Soul Ring is the best, followed by possibly Command Sphere or Arcane Signet, and then the other one is the third worst. Honestly, these could be tied for equal. Obviously, Arcane Signet is cheaper. However, Command Sphere does sacrifice to draw a card. So both are good. And as I said, I do love the card art here that we have. You know, the Plantier, the ring being crafted by Sauron, and then the stamp from the rings. Next, we have Pristine Talisman. This is a 3-cost artifact where you tap it to add colorless to your mana pool and you gain a life. The cool thing that I like about this card is that you see this little branch that we have here. This is a reference to the branches that were used to hold the cloaks together that the Hobbits wear. As you'll remember in the second movie, at the beginning, Pippin tears his off, spits it on the ground, and Aragorn finds it later, showing them that they're on the right track to tracking the orc party that had abducted them. So the card text for this card does read, each cloak was fastened around the necks with a brooch like a green leaf veined with silver. So definitely making reference to that card. Love this card art and the kind of theme that it has. I like this. Next we have Field Tested Frying Pan. This is a 3-cost equipment. When Field Tested Frying Pan enters the battlefield, create a food token. Then create a 1/1 white halfling creature token and attach Field Tested Frying Pan to it. A creature has, whenever you gain life, this creature gains +X until the end of the turn, where X is the amount of life you gained. Ooh, that's nice. So couple things to dissect here. First of all, this is hysterical, referencing the fact that Sam's frying pan was one of his primary weapons during his trek to Middle-earth, not just being used to cook him and Frodo some food. This frying pan is actually pretty scary. The fact that it can go on a token so you don't even have to attach it to a creature is nice. You can equip it for 2 to attach it to another creature like Frodo, Sam, or one of the Ents. There's been so many cards so far in this deck that do allow us to gain life that this is actually going to be kind of a nuisance. Equipped to the right creatures at the right time, you're going to have a real beat stick that certain decks might struggle to actually deal with. Next, we have the Gaffer. This is a 3-cost 2/3 halfling peasant. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, draw a card. Hell yes. So, 3 reasons I love this card. 1, it is the Gaffer. This is actually Sam's father, I believe, as he references multiple times in the movies. Most notably, or at least the one that comes to my mind, is when he's in the Citadel of... oh, frick, what is it? The Citadel, where all the orcs and Uruk-hai end up fighting and killing each other. As he starts running up the stairs, killing the orcs that come down to try to kill him, you know, he's like, that's for the Shire. That's for Mr. Frodo, and that's for my old Gaffer, which I think is hysterical. Nerdy note moment aside, this is great because it does work so well with the deck. Whenever we sacrifice a food token to trigger Frodo, at the end of the turn, this card is going to be allowing us to draw a card. Frodo draws this card, so keeping our hands full of cards is amazing. Next, we have Gwalhir, Greatest of the Eagles. This is a 5-cost, 5/5 bird noble with flying. Whenever this card attacks, target attacking creature gains flying into the end of turn. At the beginning of each end step, if you gain 3 or more life this turn, create a 3/3 white bird token with flying. And whenever this creature attacks, target attacking creature gains flying into the end of turn. This is what I was more expecting to see out of the Eagles. It does make sense that they've kept kind of a powerful card to a named character in the series. This is the eagle that rescued Gandalf from the top of the Citadel of Isengard in the first movie, and then I'm pretty sure it was the one that carried Frodo away from Mount Doom. So pretty notable character in the book. Love this card. 5 cost for 5/5 with flying that creates tokens is super good. And then whenever this card attacks, a card that is attacking with it is given flying, so allowing cards like Frodo or Ents or whatever to get over our opponent's blockers. Super good card to have for this deck. Speaking of references, next we have of Herbs and Stewed Rabbit. This is a 3-cost saga. First level is put a +1/+1 counter on one target creature, create a food token. Level 2, draw a card, create a food token. And level 3, create a 1/1 white halfling creature token for each food you control. So this is fantastic for so many reasons. Referencing, of course, the stew that, absolutely blew Gollum's mind and pissed him off really, really severely. But the cool thing about this card is not only it buffs the card, it gives us 2 turns of creating food tokens. Well, one of those turns we do draw a card, and then creates a bunch of chump blockers or cards to use to swarm the field at the end of its saga's life. So super, super good. If used after we've gained, a couple turns in the game where we've created a couple different food tokens that are just kind of chilling, this card comes down, this will be an actual problem for people to deal with. Next, we have Gollum, Obsessed Stalker. This is a 2-cost 1/1 halfling horror. That's a little rude. It does have Skulk. This creature can't be blocked by creatures with greater power. At the beginning of your end step, each opponent dealt combat damage this game by a creature named Gollum, Obsessed Stalker, loses life equal to the amount of life you gain this turn. Ooh, that's scary. So this deck currently has a lot of life gain in it. Gollum being a creature that can't be blocked by things bigger than him means that unless your opponent has a 1/1 creature that can block him, Gollum's going to be able to hit your opponents for free. And then at the end of the turn, you're going to start pinging your opponent down for however much life you gain. So that's super cool to see in this deck. I did want to focus in on this card for a moment though, because as we look at this card art, we look and we see how amazing it is. We see Gollum here staring off forward, but then we look down and we see that his reflection is actually staring directly back up at him, showing the complete split personality that Gollum suffered during his time on Middle-earth after he'd been corrupted by the One Ring. So I really do like this card, how they've designed it. I do think it is a little harsh calling him a horror. Gollum's tale is pretty tragic, and I do like the card text of this card. It says, "He hated the ring and loved it, as he hated and loved himself." So this is when Gandalf is speaking to Frodo about Gollum in the Mines of Moria. Yeah, this is a great card. I love this. I love the design. I love how this card works, and I love that's included with this deck. So, what is it? You did good. You did very good. But really, a horror? Come on, cut the guy some slack. Oh, wow, this is cool. We have Lobelia, Defender of Bagan. This is a 3-cost 2/2 halfling citizen. When this card enters the battlefield, look at the top card of each opponent's library and exile those cards face down. You may tap, sacrifice an artifact, choose one. Until the end of turn, you may play a card exiled with this card without paying its mana cost, holy crap, or each opponent loses 2 life and you gain 2 life. So this card is freaking ridiculous. If you guys are not aware of who this card is referencing, this is the halfling that Bilbo warns for Frodo about, that he caught her trying to make off with all of his silverware. This card is referenced in the extended version of The Hobbit, I believe, where we see Bilbo returning home and she's trying to make off with all of his good silverware. But I love how this card does work with the deck. This is kind of what makes it silly, is when this card comes in, you exile the top card of your opponent's library, cool, but then you can pay it by just sacrificing a food tokens, which we have an abundance of in this deck, or we will, and play it without paying its mana cost. That's huge, allowing us to cheat in, potentially something like Gandalf, Gimli, Aragorn. That's incredibly powerful. I mean, if we're playing this outside of the Commander format with these decks, potentially hitting something like an Ulamog, Karn, Fairy, any of the Praetors, that could be ridiculous. So this is a freaking amazingly dangerous card that I think people are going to have to really, really be scared of. I do think it is most appropriate in this deck, and it will be kind of funny to see when people include this in their mono black decks that they make. Next, we have Rapturous Guest. This is a 3-cost 2/2 halfling citizen with menace. So menace, of course, being you cannot block this card unless 2 creatures block it. Whenever one or more creatures you control deals combat damage to a player, create a food token. Whenever you sacrifice a food token, put a +1/+1 counter on this card. When this card leaves the battlefield, target opponent loses life equal to its power. Wow. So that is so cool how this card works. You're going to get damage through with its menace if you pick the right targets. So this card is going to get big over time. I think this card is going to be kind of like a game ender in certain circumstances. Next, we have Assemble the Entmoot. This is a 4-cost enchantment. Creatures you control have reach, I guess referencing the fact that Ents are tall. Sacrifice this card, create 3 tapped XX green tree folk creature tokens, where X is the amount of life you gain this turn. Put a reach counter on each of them. This is really nice for the deck, you know, allowing all of our potentially small halfling creatures that we have to have reach, allowing us to block big scary creatures that are flying in the air. Is nice. And then when this card has served its use, we can sacrifice it to create 3 potentially really big end tokens, either to look to defend ourselves against our opponent's big and scary creatures, or to push for game by hitting our opponents with giant big scary tree creatures. Next, we have Feasting Hobbit. Oh my goodness, this card art's amazing. Proud Feet, not Proud Foot. This is a 2-cost 2/2 halfling citizen with Devour Food 3. So as this card enters the battlefield, you may sacrifice any number of foods. This creature enters the battlefield with 3 times that many +1/+1 counters on it. Creatures with power less than Feasting Hobbit's power can't block it. This card is amazing. First of all, love the art, the card text, I love it. His name, of course, was Proud Foot, not Proud Feet, as Bilbo said. So this, of course, referencing during Bilbo's party as he's greeting all of his guests. He says, you know, at the last guest that he kind of, whose name that he shouts out, he says Proud Feet, and the Hobbit responds Proud Foot. And Bilbo just kind of throws his hands up as like, whatever. Nerdy note aside, this card's amazing. So Devour Food 3. So this card can come in if you have enough food tokens on the field. So let's see. Say we had 3 food tokens. We sacrifice them. This card comes in as a 11/11. That's ridiculous. So this is our game ending / card that we want to find, we want to set up for, and then play, and then be like, all right, let's start looking to finish off our opponents. This card is freaking wow, that's so good for this kind of a deck. I love it, especially if we have something like Entmoot on the field, so we can give this card reach, so it can help defend against, scary flying Nazguls. Next, we have Motivated Pony. This is a 5-cost 3/3 horse with trample and haste. Whenever a motivated pony attacks, attacking creature gets +1 until the end of turn. If a food entered the battlefield under your control this turn, untap those creatures and they get an additional +2/+2 into the end of turn. This is, I guess, a reference to the pony that Samwise had a bond to until they got to the Mines of Moria, in which they had to cut it loose. So I do like that this card, as long as it's attacking with another card, is gaining an additional +1/+1. If a food token entered onto the battlefield this turn, which it should have, they get +3/+3 until the end of turn, if I'm reading this card correctly. That means that our little 1/1 hobbits are becoming 4/4s. This card is becoming a 6/6 with trample and haste. All of that's super good. I do like this card. I wish it was just a little cheaper, but I do understand why it is expensive. Next, we have Prize Pig. This is a 2-cost 0/3 boar. Whenever you gain life, put that many ribbon counters on Prize Pig. Then if there are 3 or more ribbon counters on Prize Pig, remove those counters and untap it. You may tap to add 1 mana of any color. So the way that this card works, if I'm reading it correctly, you can tap it to add 1 mana, sacrifice a food, which will gain you 3 life, putting 3 counters on this card, untap it, tap it to add mana, sacrifice another food. So potentially, if you have food to tap this and just a ludicrous amount of times to gain a bunch of mana. And this isn't this isn't colorless mana either. This is colored mana. Damn. Okay, so this makes sense as to why so many of these cards were so expensive, like our big creatures like the eagles and the ents. If we have a card like Prize Pig that allow us to just generate a stupid amount of mana for just playing the deck, that's incredibly good. Next, we have Banquet Guest. This is a X-cost white-green 0/0 halfling citizen with an affinity for food. This spell costs 1 less to cast for each food you control. This card comes equipped with trample. This card enters the battlefield with twice X +1/+1 counters on it. You may pay 2, sacrifice a food. Banquet Guest gains indestructible until the end of the turn. Oh my goodness. So the way that this card is going to work, you're going to have a bunch of food tokens on the field. You're going to say X is going to cost, 37. You have 36 foods on the field, so it only costs 1 food. I do jest here. Obviously, it probably won't work like that. I guess it could, theoretically. but more than not, this card is going to cost, X is going to be set for something like 6. It's going to cost 6 less. You're going to have 6 food, so you only pay 2, so you get a 6/6 trample banquet guests on the field, to which then in your following turns you can sacrifice 2 food to make this card indestructible. So that is scary. This card in this deck specifically can get out of control pretty quick. Yeah, this is another card that I've got to keep my eye on when I'm playing with this and against this deck, because this card I feel like is going to be part of a game-ending strategy that I'm kind of trying to formulate in my head. Here he is, the man, the myth, the legend. So this is the only card that I allowed myself to be spoiled with when I saw Bilbo Birthday Celebrant. And to be fair, it wasn't even my fault, really. I was looking at a Facebook group post, and I just happened to see this card, and yeah, curiosity got the better of me. I looked at it, but yeah, this card is broken. Like, this card is stupidly broken. I'm very, very scared of this card when it makes its way into regular Commander. I think that we're gonna see quite a few Commander decks built around this card, because yeah, kind of dumb. So Bilbo Birthday Celebrant is a 3-cost 2/3 halfling rogue. If you would gain life, you gain that much life plus 1. You may pay 5 and tap, exile this card, search your library for any number of creature cards, put them into the battlefield, then shuffle. Activate only if you have 111 or more life. So this card does reference Bilbo's age when the Lord of the Rings takes place, as he's celebrating his 111th birthday. In decks built with specifically gaining life, gaining 111 life is not hard. Next we have Farmer Cotton. This is a X white-green 1/1 halfling peasant. When Farmer Cotton enters the battlefield, create X 1/1 white halfling creature tokens and X food tokens. This is a pretty decent mid-game card. You can play it pretty early if you have enough mana, but yeah, the ability to create X chump blockers and X food tokens at the same time allows you to set up for some pretty incredible plays. If you have something like Prize Pig on the field or in your hand, you can get that out pretty quick. If you have Frodo and Sam, you're going to start generating card draw. Man, this card is a great utility piece for this deck. Next, we're going to put 2 cards up on the screen at the same time because they work so well together. You know, they are partners. So we have Merry, Warden of Isengard, and Pippin, Warden of Isengard. That is super cool that they included both Hobbits here, as we knew they were, but we made them partners, which I think is great, as they were really, really good friends throughout the quests of the Lord of the Rings. So starting with Merry, Merry is a 3-cost 1/4 halfling advisor partnered with Pippin. Whenever one or more artifacts enters the battlefield under your control, create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. This ability can only trigger once per turn. Pippin, Warden of Isengard, is a 2-cost 2/2 halfling advisor partnered with Merry. You may pay 1, tap, create a food token. You may tap, sacrifice 4 food tokens. Other creatures you control get +3/+3 and gain haste until the end of the turn. Activate only at sorcery speed. This is great because both partners pair very well together. Pippin, to pay 1, tap, create a food token, which will then trigger Merry to give you a chump blocker. And then after a couple turns of tapping Pippin to create chump blockers, you can sacrifice them. All those chump blockers get +3/+3 and haste. One thing I do wish, though, is that it would say Merry, Warden of Rohan, or Edoras, and then Pippin, Warden of Isengard, because as you're aware from the movies, Merry stayed with the Rohirrim and Pippin went to Gondor with Gandalf. These 2 cards are actually really cool, and I do like that they were included in this deck because then we can swap out Frodo and Sam if we like in exchange for these 2 cards. Next we have Treebeard, Gracious Host. This is a 4-cost 0/5 tree folk with Trample and Ward 2. So in order to target this card with a spell, you have to pay 2 mana. When Treebeard, Gracious Host enters the battlefield, create 2 food tokens. And whenever you gain life, put that many +1/+1 counters on target halfling or tree folk. So that is super nice. This card is very versatile actually. It has its own protection and offensive capabilities coming in with trample, but also whenever you're gaining life, you can put counters on itself, on any of the other halflings, or any other tree folk cards. So this can be used to buff up your already big tree folk that have entered the battlefield. Next we have Hithlin Rope. This is a 2-cost artifact. This card cannot be sacrificed. You may pay 1, tap, search your library for a basic land card, put on the battlefield, tap, then shuffle. Player to your right gains control of this card. You may pay 2, tap, draw a card. The player to your right gains control of this card. You can either use it immediately or you can wait and say, look at your opponent and say, okay, look, I will tap and give you this if, you don't attack me, right? They agree. You're like, okay, cool. So I'll tap, sacrifice, and here you go. Both of these are good, either allowing you to get a land card that you need or to draw a card, neither being absurdly broken. So when you pass it to your opponents, they can't abuse it. I do like the fact also that this card cannot be sacrificed to your opponent. You can't give it to your opponents and then they sacrifice it immediately in order, to get some sort of advantage to it. So next we have Call for Unity. This is a 5-cost enchantment with Revolt. At the beginning of your end step, if a permanent you control left the battlefield this turn, put a unity counter on Call for Unity. Creatures you control get +1/+1 for each unity counter on Call for Unity. This is actually a surprisingly amazing card for this deck because it says when a permanent leaves the battlefield, you can put a counter on this card. So this works with our entire deck, either with things dying or sacrificing food and treasure tokens. And then this card allowing all of our cards to get buffed up for whatever many counters are on it. Amazing. I'm really appreciating how much thought Wizards put into this deck. I mean, all these cards are working together so well to make a good deck, and this is what you want to see in a pre-made, right? Not just, here's a commander with a bunch of cards that kind of fit with it. Next, we have Dawn of Hope. Dawn of Hope is a 2-cost enchantment. Whenever you gain life, you may pay 2. If you do, draw a card. You can pay 4 to create a 1/1 white soldier creature token with lifelink. You do gain quite a bit of life in this deck, so the ability to then pay mana so you can draw cards is a really good card for this deck. Yes, here we go, boys. I'm really happy. I'm actually just looking at the next couple cards. Love it. So first card we have is Dusk and Dawn. Dusk is a great card for this deck. Destroy all creatures with power 3 or greater. Dawn, of course, is a sorcery. Cast a spell only from your graveyard, then exile it. Return all creature cards with power 2 or less from your graveyard to your hand. Dusk is great for this deck because all of our cards are basically really small, 1/1s or 0/5s like Treebeard. The only cards that were bigger than this are the Eagles and some of the Tree Folk that we could potentially make, or some of the halflings that we have that have gotten bigger over time. So Dusk is great because it'll just board wipe all of our opponent's stuff, leaving majority of our stuff untouched. And then later on we can cast Dawn to bring back anything that we did lose over the course of the game back onto the battlefield. So super good card for this deck. Very surprised that they included that, but very happy at the same time. Next, we also have Fell the Mighty. This is a 5-cost sorcery. Destroy all creatures with power greater than target creature's power. So with this card, you're going to target either Frodo, Sam, or whatever really key card that you have. This card's going to blow up the board, getting rid of all of your opponent's stuff that's bigger than that, protecting all of your small 1/1 halflings that you have. And then finally, we have Fumigate. Fumigate is a 5-cost sorcery. Destroy all creatures. You gain 1 life for each creature destroyed this way. So ironically, this card functions in several ways. 1, it blows up the board. But 2, since you gain life for each creature destroyed this way, not only your opponent's, but also yours, if the board's gone so out of hand that everyone has just an army of tokens, you could use this, nuke the board, gain the 111 life that you need for Bilbo, play Bilbo, sacrifice him to then just kind of win the game off of that. So this card could be used as a game ender, but either way, I'm very happy that this card was included in this life gain deck. Next, we have Mentor of the Meek. Mentor of the Meek is a 3-cost 2/2 human soldier. When another creature with power 2 or less enters the battlefield under your control, you may pay 1. If you do, draw a card. Super nice to see that they gave us another draw card like Mentor of the Meek in this game. I would have maybe preferred Welcoming Vampire, but regardless, I think Mentor of the Meek is just fine. 100% okay with this card being in the deck because it does give us an outlet for excess mana that we do have either through gaining treasure tokens or using lands. So whenever we play our small creatures, we do get the opportunity to draw cards. Like I've said before, keeping your hand full of cards is always a good thing, so very happy that they've given us a way to maintain our hand size. All right, next, they did not give us Aether Flux. They gave us something just as scary. So Sanguine Bond is a 3-cost enchantment. Whenever you gain life, target opponent loses that much life. This card is incredibly scary because in this life gain deck, it does allow us to ping our opponents down while we maintain our life or gain life, going towards something like Bilbo. If we add a copy of Exquisite Bond to this deck, basically we have an infinite combo in this deck. Add Veto to this deck, again, we have an infinite combo. So this is a very scary card to have in this deck because it does open the abilities for us to have just an instant win on the field. However, I am glad that they included this card specifically because, in a life gain deck, pinging your opponents down is what you'd like to do. So Sanguine Bond facilitates that greatly. Also, I do love the art that they've chosen. As you see here, we see the ring race and Frodo clutching his shoulder. So this is showing Frodo after he's been stabbed by the Witch King of Angmar with his Morgul blade. Card text does read, "They tried to pierce your heart with a Morgul knife, which remains in the wound. If they had succeeded, you would have become like they, only weaker and under their command." Gandalf. Super good card for this deck to have, and I love the card art that they've gone with, as well as the card text. I think it's a great way of showing this card in the Lord of the Rings setting. Next, we have Toxic Deluge. This is a 3-cost sorcery. At additional cost to cast a spell, pay X life. All creatures get -X/-X until the end of turn. Toxic Deluge, being 3 mana, is actually cheaper than most other board wipes we have in the game, other than I think Last Reckoning. But This one has a much nicer additional cost as Bontu's like you can untap your lands. This instead, we just have to pay life into this card, which is fine. Life is something that we're not going to be worrying about. So I'm glad that they gave us another board wipe in this deck, help control the board. As this deck is going to take a couple of turns to really get set up and going. So having this many board wipes I don't think is a bad thing, and especially if this deck does get hit hard by our opponents, which it probably will, it gives us some time to then, get back into the game. Next, we have Birds of Paradise. Birds of Paradise is a 1-cost, 0/1 bird. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. I am surprised to see this card in this deck. Birds of Paradise is a just fantastic card to have. If I'm correct, it has slightly gone up in price over the past, so I'm glad that it was included in this deck, because basically every deck I play has green in it, so every deck I have has Birds of Paradise in it. So I am glad they gave us here, and this card just has amazing artwork. This hummingbird here with its rainbow color scheme to it looks amazing. Alright, this is a card I was really hoping that we're going to see in this deck. So next we have Gilded Goose. Gilded Goose is a 1-cost 0/2 bird with flying. When Gilded Goose enters the battlefield, create a food token. You can pay 2, tap to create a food token. You can tap this card, sacrifice a food token, add 1 mana of any color. Super glad this is in here, as this works on 2 different levels, either to create us additional food tokens that we can then use with our combos, or if we have, an abundance of food tokens, this card taps and allows us to generate whatever kind of mana we need for that turn. So very glad that this was included in, and I mean, that card art is freaking amazing. Next, we have Woodfall Primaris. This is a 8-cost 6/6 Treefolk Shaman with Trample. When this card enters the battlefield, destroy target non-creature permanent. It does have Persist. When this card dies, if it had no -1/-1 counters on it, return it to the battlefield under its owner's control with a -1/-1 counter on it. Nice thing about this is that when you play it, it comes out and blows up something on the field. It can't be a creature, which does suck, but it's okay. There are enough other things in the game that you want to destroy: equipment, enchantments, artifacts, what have you. The scary thing about this card is it does not specify that you cannot target a land with it. It just says target non-creature permanent. So the way I do read this card is that you can destroy a land, which is scary. Land destruction, of course, being one of the rudest things that you can do in this game. So this is going to earn a lot of hate real quick, because once this card dies, it comes back from the graveyard and then does it again, because this is not a when cast card. This just said when it enters the battlefield, destroy. Next, we have Anguished Unmaking. This is a 3-cost instant. Exile target non-land permanent. You gain 3 life. This card is really nice to have been included in the deck. I mean, I always like cards that allow us, just to get rid of one problematic target, rather than necessarily board wipes. I mean, board wipes are great for when they are needed, but there are times where you just need to destroy one thing and that's it. So I am glad that they've included things like this. And I like that it was specifically this card. There are other 3-cost instances that they could have included, to destroy target permanent. However, I do like that it was Anguished Unmaking, because it ties so well into the theme. As you can see here, the ring has been thrown into the lava of Mount Doom. The card text reads, "There was a roar and a great confusion of noise. Fires leapt up and licked the roof. The throbbing grew in a great tumult, and the mountain shook." So obviously this card is referencing when the ring is being unmade and Mount Doom starts freaking out and actually ends up exploding. Next, we have Chromatic Lantern. Chromatic Lantern is a 3-cost artifact. Lands you control have tap, add 1 mana of any color. Tap, add 1 mana of any color. So this card is great for this deck because it does fix any land problems that we do have, or sorry, any mana problems that we do have, and it self-taps for any specific mana. Next, we have Trading Post. Trading Post is a 4-cost artifact. You may pay 1 tap, discard a card, you gain 4 life. Pay 1 tap, pay 1 life, create a 0/1 goat creature token. Pay 1 tap, sacrifice a creature, return target artifact card from your graveyard to your hand. Pay 1 tap, sacrifice an artifact, draw a card. So potentially this card does give you several ways of drawing. You tap, ditch a card, draw a card, and then return that artifact from the graveyard to your hand to then immediately sack it again later the following turn. So happy this is in the deck. I do like that it is so versatile, as I love any card that gives me multiple options instead of just one. Next, we have Well of Lost Dreams. This is a 4-cost artifact. Whenever you gain life, you may pay X, where X is less than or equal to the amount of life you gain. If you do, draw X cards. That is great. This deck gains basically at a minimum 3 life each turn, so as long as you have 3 open mana, as long as this card's on the field, then draw 3 cards. That is fantastic. That's a really, really powerful artifact they have included in this deck. So now we move on to our land cards. I'm not going to cover the ones that we already have covered in previous videos, but I do think they should be showing off again because of how cool they are. We got Command Tower, Exalted Orchards, and Path of Ancestry. All 3 of these are fantastic landing cards to have in a commander deck. I'm very happy that they were included, just because they do work so well with any sort of deck, but especially a themed deck like this deck. Next, we have some interesting cards that I was kind of surprised that they put into this deck. First of all, we have Rogue's Passage, Access Tunnel, and then, of course, everyone's favorite card, Ghost Quarters. So, Rogue's Passage, I kind of feel was put into this deck just because it was it showed Hobbiton. Access Tunnel is a cool card. You can pay 3, tap. Target creature with power 3 or less can't be blocked this turn. Works kind of similar to Rogue's Passage. And then Ghost Quarter, it either adds colorless or you can sacrifice Ghost Quarters to destroy target land. Its controller searches their library for a basic land card and puts it onto the battlefield, then shuffles. So we have 2 cards that allow us to bypass our opponent's defenders, and then a card that basically blows up, you know, target cool land like command towers, and our opponent just gets a single basic land from it. And the final batch of interesting lands that they've included with this deck is Ash Barrens, Shire Terrans, and Evolving Wilds. So Ash Barrens is a card, basic land cycling for 1. You pay 1, ditch this card, get a basic land card onto the battlefield. Evolving Wilds, sacrifice it, put in a basic land card of any color onto the battlefield, tapped and shuffle. And then Shire Terrans, pay 1, sacrifice this card, search your library for basic land card, put it onto the battlefield, tapped, and then shuffle. So all 3 of these cards are great because they allow us to get whatever sort of land that we need, so that in the following turns we can make whatever plays we want. So next we have our 2 tri-lands that were included in the set. Very happy that they gave us these for this 3-colored deck. I don't believe that they gave us any of these in the Rohirrim deck, so happy that they were in this deck. We get Sandsteep Citadel and Murmuring Bosque. So Sandsteep Citadel is a land that comes into play tapped. You can tap it to add either white, black, or green to your mana pool. And then Murmuring Bosque is a forest that, you know, you can tap for a forest. Or you can tap it to add white or black, and it deals 1 damage to you. So as this card enters the battlefield, you reveal a Treefo card from your hand. If you don't, this card enters the battlefield tapped. Pretty nice for both of those cards, giving us access to multiple colors. Next, we have our white-black lands. We have Shinestone Snarl, Isolated Chaplain's Scorched Barrens. Scorched Barrens, when it comes in, gains life. Isolated Chapel comes in to play tapped unless we control a plains or a swamp. And then Shinestone Snarl enters the battlefield tapped unless we reveal a plains or a swamp card. All 3 of those lands tap for both white and black. As for our white-green cards, we have Shattered Grove, Sunpetal Grove, and Greypelt Refuge. Greypelt Refuge, when it comes to the battlefield, we gain life, does come into play tapped. Sunpetal Grove enters the battlefield tapped unless we control a plains or a forest. And then Shattered Grove enters the battlefield tapped, however, it does have cycling for 2, so we could pay 2 to cycle it away to draw a card. Next, we have Fortified Village, Canopy Vista, and Brushland. So Brushland is a land that taps for colorless. You can have it tap for white or green. However, it does deal 1 damage to you. Canopy Vista enters the battlefield tapped unless you control 2 or more basic lands. And then Fortified Village enters the battlefield tapped unless you reveal a forest or a plains card. And then finally, we have our Golgari mana cards. So we have Necrobloom Snarl and Woodland Cemetery. Necrobloom Snarl enters the battlefield tapped unless you reveal a swamp or forest. And then Woodland Cemetery enters the battlefield tapped unless you control a swamp or a forest card. So that is super nice. Now looking at our basic land cards that we have our playing cards for the deck. Next we have our black cards. And then finally, we do have the 2 forests that we have spoken about. Like I said, I do believe this is Mirkwood, and then this is just some other forest. But that does it for the deck, guys. Included with this deck, like all the other decks that we do get our alternate art Frodo card. So this card, like all the other cards that come with the Commander format, is actually a lot thicker than a traditional Magic the Gathering card. It does have, like I said, additional alternate sort of card style. Right, you can see the difference of the 2 cards. It is nice that it's included. For me, I like to use this card as my stand-in for my commander, so I'll put this on the field instead and just kind of have this card somewhere else. So included with the deck, like all the other cards, we do get some tokens. We get the 1/1 halfling. On the back of that card, we do get a treasure token. Of course, we do have our food cards, as we're going to be making a lot of food tokens. And on the back of those food tokens, we do have either a soldier card or a bird card. So very nice that those cards were included. But yeah, we're probably just going to be using a majority of those food tokens because, yeah, we're going to need a lot of them. Next, we do have our goat token. On the back of those goat tokens is a bird token. So if we need more bird tokens, we do have access to them. And then finally, we have even more food tokens. So this deck did come with 6 food tokens, which is super nice. And on the back of those food tokens, we do have some tree folk tokens. So Super nice. Very glad that they gave us all the tokens that we could ask for, but most specifically, they gave us 6 food tokens, which is kind of required. Along with this, with these decks, they do give us the One Ring. This One Ring was introduced into this Commander format as a new way to play Magic the Gathering games. So I won't get into it here, but on the front it does show what the ring will do if it tempts you, and on the back it gives you the rules for using the One Ring. And then as well, you do get this little card that comes with it, explaining the different formats of Magic. And then if you flip it over, it does break down how your turn works. But we're not done with that, guys. Even though that is the end of the deck, like I said before, each one of these decks comes with a booster pack. And we'll see what we get in this one. Perhaps we get lucky and we pull the One Ring. Who knows? If not, there are still some really cool reprinted cards that I would like to get my hands on from this set. So the first thing that we do get with this is we do get this little card that has, you know, play with friends, and then on the back has this secret lair thing where you can visit here. But that's not what we're here for. So the first card that we did pull was Sam, Loyal Attendant. So this is the full art version of the Samwise Gamgee Commander that we do have for the deck. And then the second card that we have is Elrond, Lord of Rivendell. I am absolutely in love with how this looks. We have the elven language around Elrond here. So Elrond, Lord of Rivendell is a 3-cost 2/3 elf noble. Whenever Elrond, Lord of Rivendell or another creature enters the battlefield under your control, scry 1. If this is the second time this ability has resolved this turn, the ring tempts you. So very nice to have pulled both of those cards. I'm quite happy with that. I'll give you guys my final thoughts on the deck while I begin to sleeve this deck up. I honestly, so far, have done 3 of these unboxing. We did the Rohirrim, Men of the West sort of deck, and we did the Elven Council deck. So far, from what I've seen, I actually think that this Hobbit deck here is actually the strongest of the 3 so far. The way that this deck was built shows the amount of absolute care that was put into this deck, as well as thought on how they wanted this deck to behave, as all the cards synergize really well with each other. And they gave us cards that just allow us to do such cool things, like Bilbo, like Sanguine Bond. You know, they gave us a lot of spot removal, a lot of board wipes, which I think is great. I mean, this is very reminiscent of how I would personally build my own commander deck. Obviously, I would remove probably these 2 bird cards from the deck, but even without removing those bird cards, I think the deck will function pretty well. I don't see anything that was like, oh my god, why the heck would you put this card in this deck? I think, like I said, this deck was just really well thought up as it was done. But guys, that is just my humble opinion of it. I think, however, that this deck is super cool. All of these decks have been just awesome and amazing. I'm very happy that Wizards put so much care and thought into these decks. So that'll do it for me, guys. Up next, we'll do our next deck unboxing, and yeah, hopefully I'll see you there, guys. Peace. Hey guys, thank you so much for watching. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you in the next one. Peace.